What's up guys, welcome back. Now I've done a few videos on this gun. This is my M&P 2.0 and 10mm. If you haven't seen those videos, I'll link them below, go watch those. But as you know, after watching those videos, the one thing I hated about this thing was the trigger. And I finally got an aftermarket trigger, so let's jump into it. I've done a few upgrades to this gun. I've had it for probably a year or so. And the first time I took this out to shoot, the one thing I knew I had to do was a trigger in this thing. I hate the trigger in it. It is horrible. Let me show you why. Yes, this gun is safety checked. There's nothing in it. But let me show you this. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, but you can see the jumpiness, the grittiness. That's just on the take up. Then it'll break. And on the reset, you'll be able to hear a faint click when it resets, but you cannot feel that in the trigger, which drives me nuts. I hate that you cannot feel it in your finger when that trigger resets. And I know I've seen all the comments in those previous videos. Put 1,000 rounds through it, dry fire it 1,000 times, it'll smooth out, go away, it'll be fine. Or I've also heard in the comments, you're just jumping on the bandwagon, everybody says that trigger is shit. Which is not the case. I didn't watch any videos on this gun pertaining to the trigger before I made the videos I made. So those are my two biggest complaints, the grittiness in the take-up and then the reset. I instantly started looking for a new trigger, and for most guys, the first place to look for a Smith & Wesson trigger is Apex. Over the last year, they haven't had a trigger that worked in this gun. Yes, I saw some guys using the trigger kits that were available for the 45 and stuff and putting them in this gun and it running perfectly fine, but it wasn't verified by Apex that all the safeties and everything worked. They didn't have a specific trigger for this gun until now. I was checking with them here and there, checking their website for probably the last 8 months or so, and hadn't found anything until somebody watched one of my videos and dropped a comment saying it's now available for the 10mm. So I jumped on, ordered one of those right away. I don't know if you can see that little yellow circle. It does say that it's certified for the 10mm and the 45. So this trigger will work in any of the M&Ps other than the Shield models, 9mm, 40, 10mm, and 45. And it is the forward set trigger kit that comes with a new striker block, sear, all the springs, all that stuff. So I'm going to throw this thing in and see how it changes the characteristics of this trigger and see if it eliminates those things that drive me nuts about this. So we're going to jump over to the bench. I'm going to do a trigger pull test on this, see what it's pulling at right now, and then we'll also do an after and see how that changes the characteristics of this trigger. Alright, so let me show you this once again. The take up on this thing is extremely gritty. You can hear that, you can feel that. You hit that wall, breaks clean. And then on the reset, you can hear a faint click. Right now in a quiet room on the range, you cannot hear it. And you also cannot feel it in your finger, which is one of the things that drove me nuts. We'll test, see what this thing's pulling at, and then we'll jump into throwing this trigger in. Now a few things before we do that. Like I said, this is the flat face forward set trigger kit. It comes with a new trigger shoe, the trigger return springs, the sear springs, a new sear, the safety plunger, and a new safety plunger spring. One thing Smith & Wesson did do on this gun versus previous guns is got rid of that double hinged trigger shoe, which is nice, but this one is plastic also, which I didn't like, and I got the metal version of the trigger shoe in this forward set trigger kit. So let's do a 3-pull average on this trigger and see what it's pulling at. I'll try and keep this in the same spot every time. 5.31. .12. 4.4. So we're averaging 4 pounds, 12 ounces in those.
You know who made it.
got that installed. Now Apex does send this information sheet with the trigger that has all of the springs you can use and what different combinations achieve what pull weights, and so it just kind of goes over everything and what different combinations of springs achieve what pull weight. So on this, when I was installing it, I first installed I put everything in Apex and did the duty carry return spring and the duty carry sear spring. Put it all back together. It was a little heavy for me, and that was like middle of the road as far as their chart goes. I wanted to try all the different springs and see what combination works for me. So I tried the heavy springs, the duty carry springs, the factory springs, and a combination of all three of those, mix and match. And what I ended up on was the factory sear spring underneath that sear, the duty carry trigger return spring, and then obviously I left that Apex striker block spring that they sent in there. So those are the three springs that I have in here right now. So we're going to do a quick trigger pull test and see what it's pulling at now. .44. 3.96. 3.68. So average of 3.69 pounds. So 3.5 pounds roughly that it's pulling at with that combination of springs. Now, after installing this trigger, you can tell that this take-up has changed drastically. It is a lot shorter. There is no more grit at all, which is due to that smoothed out striker block and that lighter spring in that striker block. Hits that wall, breaks, nice clean break, hardly any over travel. And the reset. Now I can at least feel when that trigger resets in my finger. So that's what it looks like with that Apex Action Enhancement Trigger Kit in the MMP 2.0 10mm. Now, sorry I couldn't show you guys how to install this thing. Like I said, YouTube's been hammering channels like this for install videos or modifying firearms. So I don't want to risk getting another channel strike. But that trigger changed this gun drastically in my opinion. Again, the take up is a lot shorter. Nice crisp break, hardly any over travel. And then the reset is audible and you can see it push my finger forward. So it alleviated some of the problems that I was having, some of the things that I didn't like about the factory trigger. And I'm the type of guy that's impatient, don't want to throw money at 1,000 rounds to get the factory trigger right. I would rather spend the 160 bucks on a Apex trigger kit and fix it right off the get-go, so I can have that consistency in my trigger and knowing what it's going to do and know that it is reset. If you haven't seen the other videos I've done on this gun, I'll link those down below. I'll also have a link that takes you over to our website that has all the parts and pieces that I've used on this gun, so you guys can go check those out if you want. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll check you guys on the next one.